How do you mute cleanly when playing funk rhythms? It all has to do with muting every single string except for the one note you want to ring out, because with your picking hand, you want to strum all the strings so you can get a percussive sound on top of the note you're trying to play, and that's what gives you that funky rhythmic sound we're so used to hearing. In this video, I'm going to show you a few techniques that allow you to strum all the strings while only getting one note to ring out. Technique number one only works when you're playing using the second, third, or fourth fingers. We're going to be muting using the fingers behind the note we're actually playing. If I play with my pinky, I'm going to mute using the first, second, and third fingers behind the pinky. And if I play with my third finger, I'm going to mute using the first and second fingers. And if I play with my second finger, I'm going to mute using the first finger behind that note. Now, the more fingers you have muting the strings, the cleaner and tighter you're going to sound. That means that playing with your pinky is your best option here, because you're going to have all three fingers behind that pinky to mute all the strings. So my pinky is my go-to when I'm playing percussive funky rhythms, but it's not ideal because most of the time you'll use at least two fingers when you're playing funky solos. So when you practice this technique, you want to get proficient using all three fingers, not just the pinky. Now it's not going to be perfect, especially if you're only using one finger to mute all the strings, but that's fine because sometimes it's just a part of that funky raw rhythmic sound. So playing with any of these three fingers is going to be your go-to technique. The rest of the muting techniques we're going to be talking about only apply when you're playing using your first finger. Now this is a bit trickier because you can't use any of the other fingers to help you mute, so we need to get creative here. There's a few strategies here that we can use, and they all depend on which string you're going to be playing on. Alright, let's start with the low E string. If you're playing on the low E string with your first finger, you're going to be muting with the entire bottom part of your first finger. You're going to hit the note with the flat part of your finger instead of the tip, and the rest of your finger is just going to rest on all the strings, and that's what's going to cause them to mute. So if I play that first note, the rest of my finger is just resting on the rest of the strings, and then I can strum everything and only get the one note to ring out. This technique also works when you use any of the other three fingers on the top string. The next technique again only applies to the first finger, this time when you're playing on the A, D, or G strings. And there's three things happening with this technique. Number one, your thumb is going to be muting the strings above the finger. Number two, like we talked about before, the bottom of your finger is going to rest on the bottom strings. Number three, and this is a little bit more advanced, but the tip of your finger is going to be muting the string above the one you're playing by lightly pressing against it or touching it. So if I'm fretting the G string, the D string is getting muted with the tip of that first finger. So I'm fretting the G, but that D is getting muted with the top of my finger. So if I hit both of those notes, you only get one note to ring out. Because the bottom of my finger is muting the bottom three, I can hit all four strings and only one note is coming out. Now I still have the E and the A open. I'm going to take my thumb, mute those two strings, and now I got. When I have my hand in a comfortable position, my thumb can only mute the first two strings comfortably. So instead of having to reach over to that D string or G string, I only mute the first two strings with my thumb, and that D string gets muted by the tip of my finger. The rest of the strings, like I said before, are muted with the bottom of my finger. Now the last technique we're going to be talking about is a little bit limiting in terms of how funky you can get with your rhythms, because I'm actually going to be muting the right hand this time to mute the strings. This technique really only applies when I'm using the first finger to fret a note on the B or the high E string. It's pretty much just that raking technique we use when we bend strings, where as my hand drops down to strum the strings, the side of my thumb is going to mute all the strings except for the one note that I want to ring out. This technique is a lot more advanced than everything else because you need to get used to raking and to have that accuracy of not muting the one note that you want to ring out. If you're struggling with this technique, for now you can avoid this by just using any of your other fingers to play the bottom two strings. And here's what all these techniques sound like when you put them together. The best way to practice all these techniques is by playing through any of your favorite scales, for example the pentatonic, and strumming through all the strings, trying to get only one note to ring out at a time. You can also try just improvising a solo, strumming all the strings the entire time, and trying to get only one note to ring out, just so you can get used to all the different muting techniques on different strings. Now, and different fingers. Now, the more you keep practicing this, eventually you're gonna figure out different techniques that work best for the way you play, and the different fingers that you use for different licks, and you're gonna be able to quickly bust these out when you drop into a funky rhythmic solo thing. Sometimes it'll be raking the strings, sometimes it'll be using your thumb, sometimes it'll be, using the pinky or the ring finger, even though you might not play that lick with those two fingers. In real time, the more you practice this, you'll just be able to bust these techniques out without even having to think about it. All right, bonus technique. I'm gonna give you one more funky technique you can use, and that's you want to apply ghost notes to fill in the space between the notes you're actually fretting and hitting. Instead of playing this, you wanna go. And all I'm doing there is I'm adding ghost notes in between the actual notes that I'm playing. Ghost notes are just used to maintain the rhythm and provide a percussive sound without producing any pitch, and it's great for just, keeping that groove and emphasizing certain beats. It's very simple to play this. All you need to do is slightly lift your finger up, so you're muting the string, but you're still touching it. With your right hand, you want to maintain a steady groove, and just press down whenever you want to hear the note. All these techniques sound wicked with a wah, so if you have a wah, mess around with that. And that's how you get funky clean rhythms. If you want more videos like this, plus exclusive Q&As with me, monthly coaching calls, personalized feedback on your videos, full access to all of my guitar courses, and a community of other guitar players, click the link in the description to join my exclusive monthly membership for free.